What is a session like with the Rolling Stones?
They really, really are the greatest rock and roll band of all time.
Yeah.
I didn't fully get it, to be honest with you, till I was able to play bass with them.
Yeah.
You don't just lock with one guy. It's a group conversation that's relaxed and jocular. They're having fun. They're lobbing musical softballs to each other. And bam.
Go. Let's go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the show. We have an incredible guest for you today, a legend, the man, Don Was. Don has produced so many artists from the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, Bonnie Raitt, Iggy Pop, Willie Nelson, John Mayer, the B-52's, Roy Orbison, Sheryl Crow, Ringo Starr, Elton John, Neil Diamond, Brian Wilson, Wayne Shorter, and so many more. He is also the president of Blue Note Records, one of my favorite labels in the world. We are live at Don Was's home studio today for this conversation, and we go deep into his life, his career, his philosophies, what he's learned along the way. And, you know, it's just, I hope you enjoy getting to get into the mind and soul and heart of this incredible man. So thank you, Don, for giving us a bit of your time today. We loved our conversation. And if you are new to the podcast, please like, subscribe, and share it with your music-loving friends. So I won't hold you away from this anymore, ladies and gentlemen. It is Don Was. Well, man, thank you so much for taking the time out. So great to get to hang with you and talk.
Pleasure, man.
First of all, will you tell me where we are in this room? Who's recorded in this room?
Well, I've worked on a lot of different records from this room. Yeah. I'd like never had the Rolling Stones like set up all of them in this room, but we've done stuff in here.
Like tracked guitar.
Guitars,
yeah.
and, you know.
It's a great vibe. We're at Don's house right now. Thanks for having us into your home. This is a great home studio, man. I'm so comfortable.
Oh, that's a big deal. That's a big deal in any studio, man. Your vibe is everything.
Yes.
There's not a whole lot you can control, really, in making records. Lightning has to kind of strike the room.
Yeah.
And you don't control that.
Yeah.
That's one of the things you have to kind of accept, that you could make a good record without lightning striking the room, but good is the enemy. You don't want to be good. It's got to be great, man. It's got to get under people's skin, and that's kind of that kind of moment comes from without. You can't really make that happen. All you can do is make people comfortable and receptive to it, and make sure it's in record when it happens.
Make sure you hit record. Yeah. That's what I was just looking at. I was like, look at yeah, so you can control the vibe. You can get the right people in the room. What else can you control?
Well, you know, what it's like is like surfing, right? Mm-hmm. You can learn how to stand up and ride a wave. Yeah. And you strengthen your muscles and you work on your balance, and you can do cool things, but you don't control the ocean. Yeah. You know, that wave is coming from somewhere else, and that's going to determine what your ride is. And if it doesn't come in, you're not going to get a ride. Yeah. You can't make that happen. Music's, all art is pretty much the same thing. You know, it comes from within. One time, I asked Bob Dylan, my hero, you know, I was working with him, and I said, how come you can write Gates of Eden and I can't? And he said, well, look, man, if it makes you feel any better. He said, I didn't really write it. I remember moving the pencil over the paper, but it came from somewhere else. I was just transcribing. I thought maybe he was being coy, humble. But then it's all the people I admired who I subsequently worked with, like Brian Wilson or Willie Nelson or KRISTOFFERSON or Mick and Keith, great writers. They all say the same thing, you know. Mm-hmm. I don't know where it comes from, but it comes through you. And in fact, you know, Keith, he's got a thing in the studio where if he has an idea, he doesn't say, hold it, I got an idea. He says, wait, incoming, just a second. And that's kind of the way it is. And it's that way when you play too, I think. Yeah. You can learn the scales and you can develop all the technique you want. But there's something that happens when the music starts flowing through you from another place, and you forget that you're holding a piece of wood and your fingers kind of move themselves. And it's the most exhilarating feeling in the world, man.
Yeah.
It's ecstasy.
Being tapped in.
Yeah. It's just the rush, man.
Yeah.
If you're looking for dopamine, and there's nothing comes close to that. And the same is true in the studio when when something magical is happening, when the force is with you, and it's exhilarating.
Is there any trait you have noticed from working with all these great people that allows them or enables them to be tapped in, to be that vessel?
Yeah, no, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
The way I look at it, it's like all the songs are floating up there in this kind of dense, creative ether. And all the best songs are at the top. And some people just got longer tentacles than other people.
Yeah.
And they can get to that stuff. For the real thing, it's an elusive quality. You can't learn it in music college or anything like that. You can approximate. Plenty of people approximating true inspiration, and probably enjoying maybe even greater commercial success than people who are coming from the real place.
Yes.
I'm going to take that back. That's too cynical. I think that even if you listen to some pop stuff that you think is throwaway, there's somebody who's serious behind it, and people can smell fraud.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just, there's the prosaic and there's the divine. I don't know, and I don't know how you write Gates of Eden. I still don't. Watching them closely, man, I don't know where it comes from.
Yeah. So I want to get more into the Blue Note side of stuff, since I'm going to try to rip through as many short, awesome questions as possible. So you got the Blue Note gig, running Blue Note.
Yeah.
You were 58 when that happened?
I was 58 years old.
58 years old, you become president of Blue Note, which to me is super inspiring, that you already had this huge career as a creative, right? You came out as an artist and then started producing, and then, I mean, it's from the outside looking in, it looks like you were just hitting. Don's in the right place at the right time. Everyone wants to be with Don. He's got, you have the touch as well. You got the vessel, you create the space. So you become president of Blue Note at 58, like later in your life. Get your first job, right?
It was my first job by design.
Yes.
My goal was to get through life without having a job. And I never considered playing music or making records to be a job. That was stuff I'd have done for free.
Yeah.
This was going to be a job.
Yeah.
I was going to have a boss. I was going to have a plan to meet at every year.
Yeah.
And I was going to have to return phone calls.
Absolutely. So that's, I think, if I had one question for you, for me in my life, I toured for 15 years, made a bunch of records, and then started Jam Card in my 30s. And that was now I have a job that I've created myself. But in trying to balance, still being creative, still making records, how do you balance running Blue Note Records and being a producer and a musician?
Well, the people I work for, which is really the Universal Music Group, and going right up to Lucian Grange, who I know and have tremendous respect for, they understood that it's all connected. Yeah. And that it's probably really useful to have someone at the head of a company who also has to dig into the creative ether. Right?
Absolutely.
And it's easy to forget what that entails. Yeah. And that's a big problem for a lot of artists. That's why a lot of people don't like record companies. There's a reason record companies have a tainted reputation. Personally, I always saw it as these guys who came down to the studio, gave you terrible notes, and if you happened to to listen to them and achieve commercial success, they stole your money. Yeah, that's how I look at a record company.
They give you the worst business deal ever.
And then I started working at Blue Note, and I thought, started looking around at Capitol Records, part of Capitol. I thought, like, these aren't backroom cigar smoking guys. These are like 28-year-old kids who love music and are willing to stay here till 11 o'clock at night to help an artist that they might never even meet just because they love the thing. That's actually what a record company is made up of.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had to reevaluate all that. But ultimately, you see, the biggest mistake a record company will make will be to sign an artist that they love and believe in, and then immediately try to change them into what's fashionable in that moment.
Yeah.
And that's been the undoing of more artists and more A&R people than anything. So having been through that as an artist and as a producer, seen it happen firsthand and suffered the consequences, I knew, well, just don't do that. Sign artists you trust and encourage them to be who they are. The thing that makes them different from everybody else is not a problem for you. That's their strength. That's their superpower.
Yeah.
So encourage them to be the best version of them you can be. So it may require someone who's had some experience on that side of the thing to be running the record company, to have a record company understand that.
Absolutely.
So they've been real supportive. It's always been part of my deal that I could tour or produce as long as the company was doing well and as long as I kept it. COVID proved you don't have to go into the office to
absolutely
to get work done. So I can operate from the back of a tour bus really well.
COVID was actually, that was a great silver lining of COVID for me, because I realized, oh wow, I can go anywhere with my laptop as long as I got good Wi-Fi. I can run the company, and as long as I'm diligent enough and disciplined enough to do the 6 hours of Zooms that I'm like, be better to not do this, but I got to do that, because I mean, in running Blue Note, you definitely have a lot of meetings you got to be having, a lot of phone calls you got to be having, which takes away from your creative time. And when you're producing, that's going to be a 12-hour day, a 10-hour day, right? Like, so how do you balance your time? Where are you putting the time?
I read this interview with Frank Sinatra from the 1960s, and at that time he was making a movie during the day, so he got up at 5 a.m, went to a set, shot all day, then late afternoon, got in the car, went to a studio, he'd cut one song for an album, then he'd jump on his plane and go do Rat Pack in Las Vegas. At the time of this interview, that was his daily regimen. Wow. And they said, how do you balance all this? How do you do it? He said, whatever you're doing, be 100% in that moment, be there. Don't be worrying about what's coming up. Yeah. Don't be obsessing over regret about what you might have just up. Yeah. Just be present. So that's one way to do it. There was a deeper thing. This was really the mental battle I went through for the hour it took me to decide to take the gig at Blue Note. It was offered.
When you got the offer?
When I got the offer, I was in Manhattan, and I went for a walk around the High Line.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, you have a finite number of synapses in your brain. You got billions of them, but there's a finite number that can be active at any given time. And you shut down synaptic pathways that you're not using. They lay dormant. You don't kill them, but they stop functioning. And repetition is the thing that activates a synapse. So I thought, all right, I got to learn how to read a profit and loss statement. I know I can do it.
Yeah.
I got to learn how to respond to emails with some promptness, and take phone calls and sit through marketing meetings that it's just like, I don't necessarily really want to know anything about it.
Right. You want to be involved in the creation.
Yeah. And so I thought, I'm going to have to open up new synapses to understand a profit and loss statement.
Yes.
But at peril to what? I may never write another song, because that's the other side of the brain from now, right?
Right.
Ultimately, I decided I wasn't that good a songwriter. There's no great loss. Might as well have an adventure. And,
a new challenge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I still write songs.
Nice.
I still play. I think I'm playing better than I ever played in my life.
Amazing.
So you make it work. That's all.
So you got a tour coming up in February.
I do. Yeah.
So when you go out on that road, will you allocate a few hours a day to the emails and meetings, and then just know, I got my hotel time before sound check or something like that?
I can't sleep till sound check.
Yeah.
But I got to be up in the morning.
Yeah,
and,
you got to be the responsible
take
one.
care of business. Yeah. And I've done plenty of Zoom calls in the dressing room between sound check and dinner too.
Yes, I can imagine. So filling the time, making use of the time.
Yeah.
Being 100% in on everything you're doing.
Yeah, and I love it, man.
I
love being president of Blue Note Records.
Yeah.
It's one of the best things ever happened to me in my life, man.
Yeah,
and
so cool.
So it's not labor.
Yeah.
And it actually doesn't feel like this job that I feared. It's not lifting heavy boxes in a warehouse, which was something that I think that's how most people choose to become professional musicians is, I don't want to lift heavy stuff.
Yeah. Unless it's that bass rig.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which I think you've had a tech for a long time now. So. Wow, that's so cool, man. And you've done such an amazing job with Blue Note,
thank you,
honoring the legacy of Blue Note and also opening the doors to this new jazz sound in this exciting jazz world.
Well, yeah, I think I helped hold the door open. It was happening.
Yes. Keeping it open.
My first day that's no small thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Keeping a record company going in this day and age is difficult.
Yes. How do you do it?
It would be really hard to do if we didn't have that incredible catalog. I don't think you could start just a new jazz label and run a successful
investing in
business
making masters and
Yeah. But we've got this great catalog and we do everything we can to make sure that stays out there and is available to people. And thankfully, Blue Note fans tend to like vinyl.
Yes.
And so that's been real helpful.
Yes, that's so cool. I love it. And so I've been listening to Blue Note since I was a kid. Joe Lovano is my cousin.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so Joe, got me on drums because I come from my mom's side of the family is jazz.
Are you from Cleveland?
No. So I'm my mom is from Cleveland. Mm-hmm. I was born and raised. My mom moved to LA when she was with her dad and her siblings when she was young. She was in her 10 or something.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised in Pasadena. But went to Cleveland every single summer and everything. So, but yeah, and my dad's side is more rock and roll. Wow. So my dad would be playing me Zeppelin and then Joe would come over and play me Bitches Brew, and Joe's a killing drummer too.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. And he's a beautiful guy. I feel a real kinship with him. We're maybe born a month apart.
Oh, really?
Something like that. Yeah. And so he grew up, Detroit was not that different from Cleveland.
Yeah, for sure, right there.
And we grew up going to the same ballrooms and taking the same LSD.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of common roots.
Yeah.
And I love Joe.
He's the best, man. He's the best. We did, we made our first jam card film called Trap Jazz. And Joe came with me. He was my date to the premiere in New York this last summer, which was awesome.
That's great.
And then we also made the Immediate Family documentary with Waddy and,
sure, yeah. No, that's a great
Leland
movie.
And all them. Yeah. So, but anyways, Joe. So I've been Blue Note to me was just this thing my whole when I was a baby. It was just going and seeing Joe play and seeing. It was really enabling or empowering for me to see someone in my family playing jazz and making a living. I saw that when I was 5, 10, whatever, going and seeing Joe play and whether he was playing at the Bowl with Winton or if he was doing something at UCLA or wherever it was really opening my eye. And then him being the coolest dude ever.
Yeah, no,
then his practice regimen still never stopping practicing.
Was he do like 3 hours a day or something?
Just always playing. But, but I know you guys did a couple. Obviously, he was already on Blue Note.
Yeah.
When you came in 2012. Was it? But there's a few of my favorite Joe records, like Us 5. Everything he did with Us 5 was like
beautiful,
the hippest shit. And then Robert Glasper, of course.
Yeah. Well, Robert came in to the office. My very first day in the office in New York City.
Wow.
Robert came in with really rough. They weren't even rough mixes, just where, like take-home runoffs of what was to become black radio.
That's awesome.
And I'll never forget it, man. He played me this music, and I just remember tripping out to it. I knew what the roots of all of it, what the roots were, but I had never heard anyone put it together in that fashion. And especially that song, the one that really got me was the one that Michelle and Diego sings. It's like Consequence of Jealousy. Yeah. And it's like, wow, man, to come up with this. I was just blown away by it.
Yeah.
And I knew that day that this was going to be influential. I didn't understand how influential.
Yeah.
You can't go to like a high school jazz concert and not have someone get up and say, right now we'd like to do something by Robert Glasper called Afro Blue, right?
Absolutely.
And change the way people voiced chords, the way they approached improvisation, the groove underneath. It was, I think it's as influential a record as Bitches Brew, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
There's some other things like that changed the face of music.
Absolutely.
And I think that's at the core of what Blue Note Records is about.
Oh, man.
To me, when I got the gig, I was a fan for my entire life. I bought my first Blue Note record in 1966. I was 14, right? And I'd been collecting it always. So I loved the whole ethos.
Yeah.
The Francis Wolff photos.
Absolutely.
The Reed Miles covers, the music on the Van Gelder sound, the whole thing, man, just not only spoke to me, but I think because I heard it in my formative years, it helped define me.
Yes.
Who I wanted to become, and then you sort of try to become that thing.
Yeah, man.
When I got hired for the gig, I had to first mission was to go back and review the entire history of the label and try to figure out what it was about the Blue Note music that made it still sound relevant 60, 70 years later. Right. That's quite a feat.
That's a hard task.
Happen all the time.
Starting in what, 39 or what?
Started in 39, yeah. but what kind of became clear was that in every generation of the company, starting like really with like Monk, say, in 48, they signed artists who had mastered the fundamentals of all the music that preceded them. Yeah. But then took it a step further and used that knowledge to create something brand new. Yes. So Monk could play like Duke Ellington if he wanted to, but he turned the tables and did something different that changed everything, changed the way people compose songs, the way people comped under a soloist. Just the whole approach to music was revolutionized by Monk. That same thing, again, you could say for Art Blakey and Horace Silver in the early 50s. Man.
Absolutely.
What became hard bop. No jazz drummers were playing the backbeat. No one was playing funky church licks. Mm-hmm. Well, that became monumental. Yeah. So you say the same thing with like the modal experiments that Wayne and Herbie were doing in the 60s or Ornette. And Eric Dolphy out to lunch, man. Like that music didn't exist before Eric Dolphy. What kind of music is that? It didn't exist before he went in to do the session that day.
Absolutely.
And to me, Glasper was promulgating the tradition. Mm-hmm. In the 2012. Yeah, he can play all kinds of stuff, but he did something that made it brand new. So the key thing was Blue Note Records should not be a museum. It should be an evolving, living organism. And that's all we really have tried to do.
Oh man, well, you're doing an incredible job. So
thank you, man.
Thank you for everything you're doing. And I know you signed to the kids, JD and DOMi.
Oh yeah, no, fantastic, man. Yeah.
JD, I used to have the studio that was the only. What's the opposite of a silver lining? The worst part of COVID was that I had a studio at Hollywood and Vine that I had for like 15 years.
Hollywood and Vine.
Yeah, right on Hollywood and Ivar to be exact. Right next to, there was this black door next to the burrito spot.
Not formerly Hollywood Sound.
No, near Hollywood Sound.
Yeah,
now.
okay,
Yeah. Near.
Was it one of the old hiders places, or
you would just walk into this if you would walk right past this door, right? It was next to like a nail salon and a burrito spot.
Yeah,
It was just a black door.
Yeah.
But I had everyone would come through there of like my friends and I remember one day, this is years ago, young JD Beck came in because I had like 4 drum kits set up in there, obviously.
Yeah.
And so there'd be a lot of drummer sheds. We'd have all the drummer greats would come through there, and from like the Ronald Bruner Juniors to the young JDs. And we were playing one night. There's probably 6 of us in there, and JD came, and he's half our age. I'm like, at the time, I don't know, I'm 30 something at the time, but he's like 15 at the time. And I'll never forget the first time I saw him play. I was just like, what are you doing? It was so incredible. And he outlasted all of us. It was like 2 a.m. He was still just going, like, and I was like, all right, buddy. And then we had DOMi come and play at the Jam a couple times before they released the project. It was still her and JD together, but they hadn't like formalized the project yet. And I was just like, man, these kids are incredibly gifted. And then when they signed to Blue Note and dropped that amazing album, that's another album that just sounds like a new evolution.
It sure does.
Sounds like nothing else.
And I've heard the new stuff they're working on.
Yeah.
And that first album is just tip of the iceberg, man.
Yeah.
They're so deep, so good. Yeah. That's
so
really
cool.
exciting to be around people like that.
Amazing, man. Wow. All right, let's talk about the Rolling Stones. So you started working with the Rolling Stones in 93?
93, yeah.
And all the way up till today. Now we're 31 years later. It's a long relationship, a lot of albums.
Yeah.
What is a session like with the Rolling Stones?
They really, really are the greatest rock and roll band of all time. Absolutely. There's a thing that goes on in there. And I didn't fully get it, to be honest with you, till I was able to play bass with them. There've just been times when Daryl Jones couldn't be there, and I got to play. And
Lock with Charlie.
Lock with Charlie, but hear the whole thing. The beauty of it is that you don't just lock with one guy.
Wow.
It's a group conversation that's relaxed and jocular. They're having fun. They're lobbing musical softballs to each other, and bam, and they react quickly. Charlie would play something on his hi-hat. It would make Keith play something that would make Mick phrase his singing a certain way, and total harmony and totally relaxed. They've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
They know where to put it. They know how it's supposed to feel. And for all the stuff you read about conflict and dissension, it's never there when they're playing. It's a perfectly woven piece of fabric, man. And they're just the best. They're the rock and roll version of the Miles Davis group from the 60s with Tony Williams and Ron Carter and Herbie and Wayne. Just the conversation is so beautiful. So the sessions are just conversations.
Yeah.
They set up the same way they do on stage, except Mick will turn to face the drums.
Yeah.
And they just play till they get it right. Till not get it right, but till the lightning strikes.
Right.
You get
Play
the
until
magical
lightning strikes.
take. Yeah.
So as the producer, obviously you have to balance everyone, and so you're setting up the environment. And are you just being patient? Are you just staying out of the way? Are you just like, what is that special trait that makes you so special to them?
Oh, I don't know, man. You should ask them.
I guess I should, yeah.
I know I wouldn't have been there for 30 years if I didn't bring something.
Obviously.
But it's hard to say. And I try actually not to think about what I'm bringing, because
Right.
it's supposed to be, self-consciousness, man, is
Right.
next to being okay and good. Being self-conscious is the enemy.
Yeah,
It's the
absolutely.
worst. If you're playing, if you're doing anything, you want to shake that. So I don't really know what I do, and I don't have a plan. But the general plan is to try to figure out what the artist has in mind,
Yeah.
and then help them get there.
Yes.
And you do that by whatever means necessary. That varies dramatically from not only from artist to artist, but maybe from song to song.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe bringing respect and humility. I think that's an important quality for a producer to have.
Absolutely.
You shouldn't go in there acting like you know everything and you can't bully the Rolling Stones if you want to, man.
I would imagine that would be hard.
No, you just get kicked out.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly.
So you have to at least treat artists the way you want to be treated. I've been produced.
Yeah.
And there are ways I really didn't like being treated.
Yeah.
And there were ways that were really helpful.
Yeah.
So you just learn from it. You do it long enough.
Well, speaking of long enough, right? You got like a 30-year relationship with the Stones. You have this long relationship with Bonnie Raitt, right? You have these incredible, beautiful relationships, which relationships are really hard to keep together, right? Like no matter what, whether it's a friendship, partnership, musical partnership, like, and especially with Bonnie, you have her as an artist, but then with the Stones, you got a group of personalities, right? Like, so to keep those people together is the secret. Just, I guess I'm already going to answer. You're just going to be you, and it's going to work. And
kinda, yeah.
Make people feel very comfortable.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
You want an artist to be able to take risks.
Yeah.
Risk is a good thing. If you don't have risk and conflict and stuff, it's probably not going to be a great record.
Yeah.
And they got to know that it's okay to fall on their face.
Yeah.
And get back up and try something else.
Yeah.
That's really important. So making people comfortable is part of it.
Amazing.
Being positive. When you hear one of the worst things ever happened to me when I was working as a musician for other producers. It's like you play something, and if you're playing, you know if it's good or not. So when is that it? And then sometimes there's no question mark.
Yeah.
Behind it. So you play this take that's killer, and no one pushes the talk back button for 30 seconds, and then they come back and they say, let's try another one. Well, what was wrong with that one? What do you want me to do differently?
Yeah.
If you can't engage in that dialogue, then you're useless.
Yeah.
Try another one is really not an acceptable means of doing business.
Yes, for sure.
You can fake your way through it.
But that's not producing.
No, it's not helping. That's not what they're paying you to do.
For sure.
Sometimes that's the correct response.
Mm-hmm.
Not always. And if you see a producer, if you do something really great or something really great happens and they don't catch it, it's over, man.
Yeah.
You don't regain that respect.
Right.
You just think, all right, well, this is let's get out of here as soon as we can.
Right.
You don't want to be that.
Yeah.
One time I waited all my life to work with Bob Dylan. I finally got to be in the studio with him. First session we did. And the assistant engineer ran cassettes of everything, including all the dialogue between.
Wow.
So I was driving home. I flipped one in. And what I heard was Bob Dylan telling me something he wanted to do. And me telling him why it wasn't going to work. Without trying it.
Wow.
And I pulled over. I wanted to throw up. It just made me ask, what the f*** is the matter with you, man? I might have reacted I might have overreacted to that.
Hypercritical.
Because the truth is, you never know until you try something.
Yeah.
So you can waste days doing that. But with the Bob Dylan, why wouldn't you try what he wanted to do, even if it didn't, resonate immediately with you? It took me a little time to get into Blonde on Blonde when it came out. It was a departure. I was still expecting, folk music.
Yeah.
So, but he was just, same with Miles Davis, man. I remember the first time I heard Bitches Brew. It was new. It's like, what the fuck are they? It's cool, but what are they doing? I couldn't figure out what was going on there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people couldn't. People, you can find terrible reviews of Love Supreme. Terrible reviews of Love Supreme.
Yeah, that's so crazy. Come on, people.
And you're just being years ahead, So if you're working with people who've consistently been years ahead of their time, maybe you should indulge them.
Yeah. So when you were younger, when you're doing Was Not Was and Walk the Dinosaur comes out and becomes a hit, how did that change your life?
It got me through the door to produce Bonnie. That was one. I mean, it had some positive effects business-wise. But if you wanted the biggest lesson to come from it was, I remember we were in London because we hit bigger in the UK than anywhere, and sooner there too. So, so we just I was there for a couple of weeks. We were waiting to do Top of the Pops.
Yeah,
and David and I went to some club and they wouldn't let us in. We couldn't get in too groovy a place. And then a week later, we're on Top of the Pops. They got a stretch limo for us, and the guy from the record company says, "Come on, we'll go back to that. We'll go to that club." And then they waited for us with open arms, and ushered us in, just because we'd been on Top of the Pops. Same schmucks we were a week before, right? And I was
yeah.
And I remember sitting there thinking, well, this is what you wanted.
There you go.
How's it feel? And it was like, let's get the fuck out of here, right? So it was a good sign.
Now that we're here, let's leave.
Yeah. Like to maybe begin looking at reorganizing priorities. One of the things you come to realize when your dreams come true is that, I wanted that because I thought it was going to make me feel whole.
Yeah.
And the trappings of material success generally don't do that for you. Yeah. And you got to look elsewhere. I think that's why a lot of musicians get really lost.
Yeah.
End up on heroin and stuff because they were aiming for this thing that they thought would be the be-all, end-all.
Yeah.
And it's not.
What makes you feel whole?
Well, a lot of things. Love makes you feel whole. It's not a music thing. But like we said earlier, when you're playing and the force moves through you and you can feel it and you do something and you can feel it go to an audience and you feel it come back. Fuck, man. It's there's no rush. There's no drug like it, man. And it doesn't matter if you're playing for 30 people or playing for 150,000. One time we opened for Depeche Mode, I think, at Milton Keynes. Which at that time, it's like a big field or something.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So there are 150,000 people there. And I thought, all right, well, I'm going to really blow my mind. I'm going to go out there. I'm not going to look at the audience. I'm going to go out there, get in my position, close my eyes. I'm going to position myself under one light and imagine that I'm back in this club called Bob and Rob's in Detroit, where I played for a number of years, piano bar. And then when I really think that can feel that I'm back in Bob and Rob's, I'm going to open my eyes and see 150,000 people and blow my mind. So I did it, and I opened my eyes, and it was like, I think it was better at Bob and Rob's. People were right in front of you. The front row was like, 200 feet away.
Security barrier.
Yeah, and you couldn't see. It was nighttime. I couldn't see 150,000 people. Yeah. So it's relative, but it's not about the number of people or the amount of money you're making. It's about whether you're channeling that energy.
Yes.
That's why I love playing with Bob Weir so much.
Yeah.
I love playing with Bobby. Songs are incredible to play. They roll off your fingers like butter, man. They're just so beautifully written. And even stuff that are you a Deadhead or not? Do you know the songs?
I'm a bit. I've seen Dead & Co. a couple times. My brother's a huge Deadhead. He knows everything.
So there are songs that I had to learn, like Saint of Circumstance, that just have what seem to be all these difficult things thrown in for the sake of being difficult. And I remember charting out Saint of Circumstance and being mad at Bobby. Like, why do you have to do, what is this? Why is this here? Until you get the full picture. Then you realize it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
And our Estimated Profit is a reggae song in 7. But
come on,
once you internalize it and you get it, or Terrapin Station's got all these odd things in there. Once you learn it and you stop thinking about it and you don't count the bars, you just know how the song goes.
Yeah,
it's brilliant, and they're so much fun to play, and the audience is so great.
Nice.
You can feel them. They come. Let's just say tuned up for the experience.
Yeah. Balloons ready.
Well, I think they're on mushrooms and stuff. So they're doing things that that already are enabling them to feel like they're part of
they're letting go.
A whole. Everything's connected. There's a oneness to everything, and they can taste the notes.
Yeah.
And you feel this group of people like pulsating as one with kind of this collective ecstasy. Right?
Yes.
And it comes back to you, makes you play differently, and then you start feeding each other, and you get some centrifugal force going. And a couple times a night, you could blow the roof off the motherfucker.
Wow.
It's just incredible.
I gotta come.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's why people follow the Dead for years, because you'll always get 2 or 3 of those moments.
Yeah.
And you'll get 2 or 3 train wrecks too. And that's part of the experience. They know you're trying to give them the moment.
At my last house, my neighbor was Bernie Cahill.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Bernie invited me to Dead & Co. at the beginning of Dead & Co. at the Bowl. There was a couple nights at the Bowl.
I remember that.
And it was amazing. Oh my God. Yeah. And I brought my brother who's a Deadhead who goes and sees like Further and everything else. He goes and sees everything. So he's definitely seen you with Bob, and that really opened my eyes, and I loved it. I loved what John brought to it. And I heard, is it true that you introduced John Mayer to Bob Weir?
I did.
Wow.
Yeah. When I was working on, I've done 3 albums with John. The first one was Born and Raised,
which is an incredible album.
Yeah, thank you.
And one of my brother's favorite albums. To keep talking about my little brother. But
cool. Good.
Love that album.
Yeah, I'm proud of that one, man.
Yeah.
I get in the car and drive with him, to the studio and stuff. And he always had the Grateful Dead channel on Sirius on, or he had cassettes of gigs, and he could identify, no, that's not 78 because Jerry's playing through this pedal or something like that. And I didn't see that coming, but he was a huge fan. So, I got the job at Blue Note, and maybe, 2014 or something, Bobby and Mickey came to see me about putting out some of their solo stuff on Blue Note. Oh, John was downstairs. He had locked out Capitol Studios and was writing songs in there. So I called him up. I said, "You better come up here."
You won't believe who's in my office.
And he came up, and they clicked.
Did you tell him? Or did he just walk in? Did he know that it was Bob Weir and Mickey Hart in your office?
I don't remember. I don't think so, but he came up.
That's so great. That's so great.
And he he was very eloquent about how much he loved the Grateful Dead and why.
Yeah.
And they were kind of taken aback. They were surprised. So they invited him, well, come on up and play sometime. So I drove up there with him. We got a couple of Airstreams parked in the parking lot of Bobby's studio, and we stayed about 4 days.
Where is that?
It's up in Marin.
Oh, nice.
And then they just jammed, and Bill Kreutzmann was there.
Amazing.
And there were various bass players. Mike Gordon was there for a couple of days.
Nice.
I played one day.
Amazing. Was this before you were playing with Bob?
Yeah.
This is before that.
And I wasn't prepared. I wasn't a Deadhead, and I wasn't prepared for it. John, to his credit, man, he was starting to write songs, and he was using Capitol Studios for that, with an eye towards making a new record. Mm-hmm. And when the opportunity cemented itself for him to go play with those guys 3 months later, he shut down the record, cleared out all his stuff, went home, and cracked the code on Grateful Dead, and particularly what was behind what Jerry was doing. He knew not to do karaoke, Jerry.
Of course.
But what is he actually doing? What modes is he using?
Wow.
Why does this stuff make people feel so good? And he really studied. And I didn't learn a single song. So I got there to play, and I'm stumbling I'm playing way too many notes. And I made the Grateful Dead sound like a Dead cover band. It was terrible, man. So a couple of years later, when Bobby called me up out of nowhere, he called, it was like 2000, whatever year we started, 2018, something like that. He called me up, he said, Rob Wasserman came to me in a dream last night. And Rob was the guy who introduced me to Bobby in the 90s.
Wow. And
Rob said, the reason I introduced you to Don was because he's supposed to take my place in the band when I'm gone. He said, so you want to start a trio with me and Jay Lane? I was like, yeah. He said, all right. So we picked a date like in a month. And this time I wasn't going to be an idiot.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to New York and locked myself in a room at the Bowery Hotel. And I got a bass from David Gage in the room. And I said, Bob, just tell me 6 songs to get into, right? Yeah. So that because it's too massive an undertaking.
Yeah, you can't just choose from that catalog.
So he gave me a list of 6 songs. And I just played them till they were etched into my soul.
Wow.
And I flew from the Bowery to Marin, right? And went up there and played with him. And I walked in. And, of course, he didn't call any of the 6 songs, but we started jamming on an A chord, just me, Jay, and Bobby. We did it for about 30 minutes. And at the end, he said, all right, it's a band. And he called Bernie. And he said, book us. And but that was something I learned from John, like, don't go in unprepared.
Wow. Yeah, John was prepared. So then you guys did the weekend with John. And then that was it, like Dead & Co.
Yeah, but at the end of the 4th day, they came in. They said, all right, let's do this.
Yeah.
You'll be a partner. You'll be in the thing. And they called Jeff, who'd played with, at least played with Bobby. I think he did more stuff, And they got O'Teal, and it was great.
Oh, man. It's such a great ensemble.
Yeah.
Yeah,
great.
Dude.
Yeah. Did you go to the Sphere?
John, yeah, I didn't. I want to go to the Sphere. I have to go.
Next year.
Yes.
Again. Yeah, you got to go.
Definitely going to that. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to bring it back to, I'm going around in your lifetime here, but just some questions to me that I was like, always thought about, like the B-52's.
Yeah.
Such a unique band.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you produce Cosmic Thing, like it's their comeback. Ends up being their biggest project.
Yeah,
Love
I
Shack.
co-produced it with Nile.
With Nile Rodgers, pretty good co-producer.
Yeah.
Nice team, the two of you.
Well, he did half the songs, I did half the songs.
Oh, okay, great. So, in prepping for that album, like when you hear the B-52's being like, okay, here's our new song, and they like play you Love Shack, like what do you think when you hear this?
Love Shack was a weird one because it wasn't a finished song. It was not one of the songs that was even in consideration. The songs I went up there. We went to Woodstock, Dreamland Studios.
Yeah.
And there were 5 songs that they sent me, and we cut the 5 songs. We finished a day early, and we were on a roll. So I was like, well, you got another one? And the way they write songs is that they'll play a groove, and the 3 singers will just start stream of consciousness improvising. Mm-hmm. They'll do it for half an hour. Then they sit down with yellow legal pads, and when a great line comes by, they write it on the yellow legal pad, and they tape it to the wall. And they start up at the top, but near the ceiling, and kind of when it gets down to the floor, it's like, all right, let's cut this together. So Love Shack was a jam on this groove that was kind of like Cool Jerk, the Capitals, right? And it was, they played me a cassette of them improvising all these things. They said, can you figure it? We don't know how to get this down from 35 minutes, right? What where's the song here? So
from 35 minutes.
Yeah. So it's like in 10, I just said, give me 10 minutes. And I looked at all the lyrics, and it seemed like the chorus was the bit about the Love Shack where it moved to different chord changes. So that's the central theme. So, all right, it's Love Shack. And then I just cut it together into a 3.5 minute thing. And we went out to cut it. And the first take was like just killer. But when we got to the Tin Roof Rusted line, Cindy sings, right?
Yeah.
Your tin roof rusted. Boom, Love Shack. There was something in the way she read the line. She started out with like too much exuberance, and then she brought it down, and it was like a manic episode in 12 seconds, but it got very emotional.
Yeah.
First of all, what the fuck does your tin roof rust?
Yeah.
Why is that emotional? But her reading of it was so deep, man, that it threw everybody in the band, and they came in wrong. So we spent the whole day trying to recut it. We got like 35 takes, and it was getting further and further from the truth. And then finally we said, wait, we're losing the thread. Let's go back to the first one, which was perfect till the band didn't come in right off of Tin Roof. So we just punched everybody in, and it's the first take.
Wow.
A couple of years ago, I got the multi-track. I was always wondering what was going on with it, because it was a very emotional session. It was the first time they recorded without Ricky being there. And that's Cindy's brother. They were all so close, and they didn't know if they could be a band without him.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe that was just the steam of the emotional. It was her burning off emotional steam on that line. Then I listened to the multi-track, and I think what happened was she was singing "Bang, bang, bang on the door, baby." And she was singing it with such power, and she missed the cue to cut off. So she started too exuberant, and then she went, anyway, whatever it was, it was just magic. That's magic.
That is definitely magic.
And to be honest with you, no one knew that was going to be a hit. That was like the 4th single off the record. It wasn't even going to be a single. And then some disc jockey in Chicago started playing it, and they got good response on the phones. So it started growing in a very grassroots way.
Wow.
I think the record company had kind of given up on them.
Wow, that's incredible.
It grew like that. And then it got to be Christmas time, and I can't remember what the album was, but Warner's was basing their Christmas push on some superstar album that stiffed. Mm-hmm. So now they got a problem in their 4th quarter.
Yeah.
What's the path of least resistance? Well, they're playing this song in Chicago. It's got some momentum going. And then once the big machine kicked in, I think we sold something like 7 million singles from that album.
So crazy.
It makes no sense. It had nothing to do with what was fashionable at that moment.
Right.
But it was just double dipped in magic, man.
Yeah. It's a contagious song.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't help but like stare at it and listen to it. And then of course groove. Like,
and you can go deep into it. If you start checking out the nuances and Fred's delivery, man, it'll keep you entertained for for days on end.
And Fred sings like it's interesting to hear that it was this massive jam in an extra time session that you came and assembled and cut down, because like Fred sings less than in most songs, I feel like, with that.
We just went by lines, but actually they're pretty cognizant of people singing more or less, and it's actually pretty evenly divided. Yeah.
It's amazing. I love that song so much. Yeah,
great. Thanks. Man.
It's one of those songs you're like, how do you write this? How does this come to life?
It. Yeah. It's an interesting way of writing.
So tell me what's going on with your band right now. You're about to go on tour.
Yeah, well, a couple of years ago, Terrence Blanchard called me, and he was doing a jazz series in Detroit about somehow rooted in Detroit music, right? So he said, we want to do one of the nights. I said, yeah, sure. It's now going on 3 years ago, right? And I didn't have a band together. I never had a band together since Was and I Was. You know? Yeah. And I never had my own band ever. Right. Never played a gig under my own name. So a year and a half goes by, and then I realize it's coming up.
Is that far in advance?
So I thought, what am I going to do here? So I took all the lessons I learned from other people, basically. Yeah. And the main one being what we talked about, the thing that makes you different from everyone else is your superpower. So I thought, all right, so I'm this guy from Detroit who grew up listening to local jazz, which turned out to later be national jazz, and going to see the MC5 and the Stooges and Funkadelic. The Parliaments played a sock hop at my junior high school.
It's so crazy.
And I just want to testify. So I worked with my heroes, and I know I can't be as good a writer as Bob Dylan or Willie Nelson, but they didn't grow up in that milieu. They didn't drop acid and go see the MC5.
Yeah.
Or the night I went to see the MC5 jamming with Pharaoh Saunders Band at a printing shop down by Wayne State, that was like insane stuff. So just don't try to be anything other than what you are, and work with people who come from the same milieu. So I went back to Detroit, called a bunch of my old friends. Some of them I've been playing with 45 years, like Dave McMurray or Luis Resto, and everybody knew each other. Everyone was comfortable, but this group of 9 people had never all played together at once. And I just got them together in the studio, and I said, let's just see if we can get something going. And I just picked 4 songs that I'd played on my radio show. A Nubian Lady by Yusuf Lateef and a couple of things. And this band clicked from the first minute. It was like we'd been playing together for decades, because in some cases we have. Yeah. And in other cases, we all listen to the same stuff coming up. And there is a Detroit sound. There's a Detroit feel. You can hear it in the music of John Lee Hooker. You can hear it in Mitch Ryder. Hear it in the MC5. You can hear it in the White Stripes. You can hear it in Kenny Burrell. You can hear it in Joe Henderson. Hear it in Donald Byrd.
Absolutely.
So we sound like Detroit, and it was too good. I thought, we got to do this for more than one night. Yes. So we did a 2-week tour through the Midwest and East Coast. And people dug it. We loved playing together. That was the main thing. So we did a West Coast run earlier in this year, in 24, and we'll pick it up again next February and do more.
Amazing, man. So I got some concerts to see.
Yeah.
I got to see you with Bob. I got to see your group, and I got to see the Sphere show.
Definitely do that.
It's going to be a fun 2025. I can't wait. Don, thank you so much for the time, man.
I really appreciate
you,
bro. Coming over, man.
Much love, dude. Let's go. Don Was.
Go with Elmo. 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 Go with Elmo.
This is the stuff, man.